You know, when walking the halls of a hospital and in my time as a clinician, I used to think to myself, there's a software system for that particular thing. There's a software system for the X-ray department. There's a software system for pathology. There's a software system that I'm using to do my own clinical notes. But this can't possibly be the most efficient way for us to share healthcare information. These silos are created and healthcare information gets lost. The patient isn't served as well as they possibly could be had all this information been collated and had all this information been easily shared. That's the topic we're going to be unpacking today, the topic of interoperability. What is interoperability? Why is it important? Why should we care as the healthcare sector? And who should we be talking to help us unpack these things? My guest today is Mr. Clive Daniel. He is a former president of the South African Health Informatics Association. He's the founder of Interoperability. He's a health informatics specialist and professional focusing primarily on image informatics. And he's going to help us to unpack exactly what interoperability is and how we should be thinking about it in 2026, particularly in the African and South African context. Clive, thank you so much for spending time with us here today on the Vital Insight podcast. And I look forward to unpacking these things with you. But before I get there, I don't mean to reveal your age so soon into the podcast. But you were actually instrumental in installing the first digital imaging department in 1996. And in that time, healthcare informatics has changed quite significantly. You've literally seen it all over the last 30 years. My first question to you is, what has stayed the same and what has changed? And what has frustrated you during that time? And what are some of the victories you've seen with regards to how healthcare informatics has grown, and in particular with regards to interoperability?
Oh, thanks, Basil, and thanks very much for having me. I'm really honored to be here. I think it's an important question. So if I look over the last 30 years of my involvement in healthcare informatics and specifically digital health, I think one of the biggest gains, the biggest wins has been the change in connectivity. We've gone from modems in the old days that used to screech and whine and moan when they're trying to connect, and slow speeds, slow connectivity, and that really did inhibit a lot of digital transformation in the healthcare sector. So connectivity has made a big difference.
Yeah, we've gone from modems to 5G now.
Yeah, and even fiber to the home and fiber now, and high-speed connections, lots of data, and we can see that change taking place within healthcare. So there's lots more data being generated. Yeah, actually, general across the whole, social media, everything is generating a large amount of data, and that's also what we find in healthcare. So that's really a win.
Yes.
In terms of where moving to digital connectivity is critical. You don't have it, you don't really achieve much in the digital space.
So there's obviously always been a will to create systems. I mean, we as medical professionals, as health informatics professionals, those on the IT side and those on the medical side, we've always known what we want to achieve, but the infrastructure hasn't always been there. So with this advancement in data sharing capabilities, we've now been able to implement a lot of what we envisioned the healthcare system would look like.
Yeah.
But for our listeners who are mainly providers, funders, policymakers, who maybe don't live and breathe DICOM and HL7, can you maybe explain to us and give us a primer on what is interoperability?
Yeah, so very much interoperability, as many of you will know, is a pillar of many of the structures that when we talk about healthcare, digital healthcare, and how to enable digital healthcare, you always see interoperability as one of the pillars that is discussed. And the reason for that is interoperability is actually how we share information. How should we share information between systems? So we often talk about systems being integrated together. But with integration, often you need like a scope, some development, and you might do it specifically for a specific thing between two different organizations.
Yes.
Interoperability expands that to being a bit broader. It says, listen, we want to share information, but we want to do it broadly. How do we do this? And interoperability is sharing information, but using standards, known standards, to achieve the interoperability function that you want. And so interoperability is essentially how do we share data between two systems, between organizations, to get the data that is required to eventually and essentially serve the patient to the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
And you touched on multiple systems. The sort of, we've created lots of multiple systems, and one of the challenges has been, well, we've got all this data sitting in these systems, but actually the data needs to be in a different place at a different time for a different user.
Yeah.
Interoperability is the function or the discussion of how we do that. How do we achieve that?
What are the 2 to 3 root causes of data fragmentation? Like, what have you found over the last couple of decades has driven that fragmentation? Yeah.
So fragmentation was initially fragmented because of connectivity. One was a problem.
Yeah.
So we built systems for specific purposes without a vision of saying, listen, it needs to be connected to other systems. So often we built systems that performed a specific function for a specific user group without the vision to say we actually want to connect it to something else.
Yes.
Obviously, as connectivity improved and the functions behind the connectivity improved, then it became, well, actually, I want to share this information. Why should I? I've got the same patient. I've got the same patient record in the same in 2 different systems.
Yes.
But they're the same patient.
Yes.
I want to merge that information together. So that is essentially where sort of interoperability came from. And we do have siloed-based systems, lots of siloed-based systems. And we still have them in South Africa. And I think the goal eventually would be that we should be moving towards interoperability, enabling interoperability so that this information is shared.
Okay, well, now you're opening a bit of a Pandora's box now. And I'm going to ask the question that's beginning to be asked. You mentioned siloed systems. And in a world that is driven by commercial incentives, these commercial incentives are not necessarily nefarious when it comes to healthcare. They are for me at least, a function of trying to keep the business operational. But we know that data is gold in 2026, and so as a siloed system, I might want to keep my silo purposely closed, so that somebody else cannot glean the data that I've built systems to so elegantly harvest on my behalf, making my system more valuable, and as a result, making it the front runner and more commercially attractive. What incentive do vendors have to engage in the conversation of interoperability? And is it something that we should maybe get the state involved in to ensure that this kind of thing happens for the good of the patient?
Yeah, so I think you touch on a very, very critical part.
Yeah.
So data is seen to be king, absolutely, and people do want to hold on to data. But on the other hand of that, when we come talk about clinical systems, and clinical systems which are meant to benefit a patient, and we have clinical information, to benefit the patient, we need to share that information.
100%.
Healthcare is about sharing information. It's not about holding information back.
Yes.
But you are right that organizations do tend to want to hold on and think that if they have the data, they have some value behind it. But to serve the patient, to improve patient care, to improve patient care delivery, and talking about the digital space, then we have to be having the conversation about sharing the information. That information doesn't necessarily belong to any specific person or thing. It may belong to the patient. It's their information. And if I was a patient, I would want my information to be shared to the appropriate people in the appropriate time frame so that they can help me if I'm ill and sick. So so the silos information. So you went on to the other topic of, well, should state be driving this process? So yes, in some ways, but I think it becomes a collaborative thing. So what we have seen is the state producing certain components around interoperability. The health normative standards framework is a good example of that.
Yes.
But there seems to have been a limit of where it's actually moved to actually implementation. And I think that's where we're sort of struggling a little bit in that space, is the actual implementation of these interoperability standards. They're there and they are being used on a daily basis. I mean, specifically in the imaging informatics space.
Yes.
They get used every day because if I didn't have these standards and I didn't have interoperability, I wouldn't be able to move one X-ray from one machine to a system. It
Yes.
just wouldn't work. So
Yeah.
so there is a lot that is there existing. But I think when you look at the bigger systems, and like we talk about the patient health record or that, then we're lacking in our interoperability and the implementation of it.
Yes, yes, yes.
To do. And yes, it needs to be collaborative, because it needs to be between public and private. And I think when we talk about interoperability, what's key is that interoperability just uses standards. It's not a technology. It's actually a document that just describes how to do it.
So I want to ask a question, because in my research into interoperability, I came across a term called FHIR.
Yeah.
FHIR, not FIRE.
No.
Is that the document you're talking about, or is that?
Yeah, so
okay.
that's one standard.
Okay.
So that's one of the
Yes.
standards that can be used. It's the up and coming new kid on the block.
Yeah. Is that a global standard? Is
Yes.
that? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you look at just a quick history with HL7, so it's a Health Level 7 organization standard. They produced a couple of standards, mainly around what they call version 2,
Yeah.
which is used significantly around the world. Can call it the legacy interoperability standard for sharing data between two systems. Then they did version 3, which wasn't so successful. It was quite complex and implementation was difficult. And now they've moved into what they call FHIR. FHIR standing for Fast Health Information Resources. FHIR basically utilizes web technology
Got you.
to deliver the data between systems. So it's we don't have to reinvent that. We're using existing technology. And yes, FHIR is a standard. So it's a document. It's a web-based document. You can go and download it from the web. You don't
Yes.
have to download it. You can just look at it on the web. And yeah, so it is the new kid on the block.
I wanna ask you something else that came up in my research. I heard the terms. I think it's semantic and syntactic interoperability, and I want to explain my understanding of it, and maybe you can help me kind of unpack this a little bit. So, in syntactic interoperability, you have two systems talking to each other, and information is shared in a pipeline where both systems understand what information is being shared. And when that information is shared, it is shared to the best of the ability of those two systems, but it's not necessarily 100% correct. That's what I understand from syntactic interoperability. And it still requires some human intervention to ensure that the information that is coming from one system to another system is accurate. Then semantic interoperability, from what I understood, was that we've got these AI systems now that are so well versed in the way the information should be understood, that the AI is able to replace the human in that loop, to be able to take information from one system that comes over to another and be able to interpret the information, properly allocate it into the next system, so that information is accurate, and also the speed of this data sharing increases dramatically. Do you think that's where we're heading with interoperability? Do you think that the human in the loop is possibly going to be that we won't need as many, or do you think that these systems are still far away from where we are right now?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think they're far away. So when we talk about these two types of sort of interoperability, as you've mentioned, I actually don't take any notice of that at all, because to me, interoperability is about sharing information.
Yes.
It's about how you get information from one system to the other. And that's the important part. We need to get that right. And you have some legacy standards that do that now and are being used, but the information might not be 100% correct, or there might not be an understanding of that information, but you have somebody that understands it and links it together and all that.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously moving forward to use technology, we want to have meaningful use of the data. But for me, interoperability is more just using a standard to share the information. And I talk about using a standard and internationally based standards, because we don't want to head into a situation where we have multiple people doing the same thing in multiple ways. I mean, I think my best example to really try and explain interoperability to your audience is to say, wouldn't it have been great if Apple, Android, and all the cell phone companies just agreed on a standard of the connection.
Yeah.
They're forced now. EU's gone that route to say it's this
It's
type,
USB-C.
and that's it. But why didn't we start with that?
Yeah.
But you go back to the whole thing about people and what they want to achieve and how they see they got power. And that sometimes breaks down our discussion of interoperability, because sharing of information and collaboration is in business sometimes isn't always seen as being the priority.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that the thing of this interoperability is we need to share information. We need to use an international standard. We need to all be talking the same language in how we achieve it. And government has started that discussion and does have it. But there's been a sort of a bit of a lack between the continuity of that. And unfortunately, we had COVID that came and interrupted sort of that whole process.
Yeah.
But it's really, we can't be sitting around for much longer saying, now we're going to do this.
Yes.
We know we can do it.
So let's talk a little bit more about implementation of that e-health strategy that government has. What was the name of the strategy again?
Okay, so the strategies, there's a strategy or a digital health strategy, which is there. But what I think you're referring to is the health normative standards framework, which is dealing with the standards specifically.
So we have this ideal thing we want to implement, and there's the actual implementation where the rubber meets the road. Where do you see the gaps? Why are we not getting there? What's holding us back?
All right. So at the end of the day, if you look at what's happened internationally in healthcare standards, is standards are there. They describe how to do things. But the problem is you need somebody to interpret the sort of use case for it.
Got you.
So you can't just say, I'm going to implement this or a standard.
Yes.
You need a use case of specific things. So if you look at the health normative standards framework, it's based largely on an organization's work, international organization's work called IHE, Integrating the Health Enterprise. Now what they did is they realized that you have multiple standards all over the place. You have DICOM, you have version 2, HL7, version 3, CDA, FIRE, all these different standards. So what they said is, let's break this down into use case.
Got you.
So let's just take an example of one of the use cases. One of the use cases is patient identification. How do I query another system that has a patient for patient identification? Can I query it and can I pull data off that tells me this is the patient, date of birth, those type pieces of information? So that's a use case. And IHE said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then what they do is they define technically the standards that you need to use. Use this standard. And if you're using this standard, this is what you have to do. So they lay out the technical framework.
Yes.
Based on the standard, which is a document. And then what happens is the implementer comes in and says, okay, I'm going to implement this. They take it one step further. And they say, listen, what we're going to do is we're going to provide you with through the universities, normally in the United States, through the universities, a platform for you to test your software against other vendors. So we all come into the same room. We all have the same focus on the use case. We're all focusing on the same standard. Now test. And obviously you've got developers together. They can fix it quickly. They work it out. And then IHE gives them a certificate to say, you have achieved this particular use case. Now, the health normative standard framework is based on that principle.
Gotcha.
But where it's lacking in implementation is the health normative standards framework is seen as this overall big thing. So let's say often you'll see systems in tenders go out and they say, you need to comply with the health normative standards framework. It's a bit of a useless statement because you're not talking about the use cases that you're wanting to achieve.
Yeah.
And if you look at IHE's use cases, they've split everything down. Radiology is its own domain, cardiology its own, medical equipment that sits in the labs. They're looking at all these different user cases of how to make your system interoperable. They provide a testing environment. And so vendors then buy into that. And what's really powerful about that is if you go into a sort of a tender or you're wanting to purchase a system, you can use that information to test the vendor by asking them, can you do this? And do you have a certificate?
Sure.
And if they do, I don't need to worry. I've got I can trust the system because it's internationally recognized, it's gone through a whole process.
Yeah.
So what's lacking in the health normative standards framework is that we actually need to talk about use cases, break it down a bit more, one level down, and start to talk about use cases, define the guidelines of how to implement that use case. And that has to be done in a collaborative way between both government and private.
Yeah.
So one of the big things, I'm not too sure if you're aware of, but just before COVID came out, and in that period, the state was developing it was HPRS, which is a patient registration system. In fact, actually, our president mentioned it at one of the sonas that,
Yes.
had this, it's integrated with Home Affairs, and that is brilliant.
Yes.
Really on the right track. Good. But what we see is the implementation hasn't grown.
Yeah.
It hasn't scaled.
Yeah.
So it might be, I think, I'm not too sure where it is at the moment, but a couple of years ago, it was like about focusing in the primary healthcare sector of government, which is great. But actually, this is something that you need to expand on.
Yeah.
And that's really where taking a simple standard, taking a use case, defining the interoperability standards that are specific to South Africa.
Yes.
Yes, using international. Let's leapfrog on the what's already been done. We don't need to rewrite the wheel.
100%.
But we need to provide testing environments. We need to let people know. So I get asked many questions by private sector. How do we engage? And I don't have the answers. I don't really know how you engage with the state in terms of moving this forward.
Well, I think we're going to have to figure that out, because if we're wanting to put something like a national health insurance on the table, that's going to be a question that's going to have to be addressed, because these two, they work on two completely different planes. They serve two completely different demographics of patients with different levels of access to information and internet and all the rest of that. So I suppose we're going to have to answer that question sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think it is a discussion that needs to be put onto the forefront and to have that. So we've built systems. We have pieces of a puzzle. And we don't necessarily put in the pieces in play. And it comes really down to a couple of things. It comes down to knowledge. People don't really have the knowledge. They're not, when we look at standards, they think, oh, good, there's a standard, but then they deviate and go off on another path because the person offers at the table that they're talking says, no, we can do it this way. And you forget, no, keep it to the standard. And we haven't had these collaborative platforms where we define certain things. I mean, but to be very honest, if I think about patient identification, to me, it's the key. It's a key foundation. If I can deal with a patient, wherever I'm dealing, health in private, public, what sector, I'd like to know that I'm talking to the right patient and who that patient is. And in a digital space, identification of the patient is critical.
A good first step for us.
A first step. Now, you can argue, people will argue, say, but we have identifiers. Use a state ID that we've got. Well, the state ID doesn't cover everything. What about all the people that are coming in, tourists? They might come into the healthcare sector. They don't have a patient ID. They have a passport ID. So should we be using, and that discussion, how we break that down. Just before you ask the next question, just to highlight that in the health normative standards framework, let me say that again. In the HPRS system, the key thing is that government defined a medical identifier. Shouldn't we all be using that? Isn't that the starting point? I see a lot of data that comes around from different systems in the healthcare sector. And I can look just across, if you look across between two provinces, identification is totally different.
Wow.
The Western Cape has its own ID, Eastern Cape has their own, and then you go into private, and every single private practice has their own as well.
And that was something that even I, who's been in the health sector now for over 15 years, that was only recent news to me that even at a provincial level, we have different systems. That level of, frankly, I'll call it what it is, inefficiency is shocking to me, that we even have that there, so... Yeah. But you've taken it a step further, and you haven't just sat on your laurels and preached from a soapbox. You actually have gotten down and onto the ground and tried to help healthcare professionals, health informatics professionals, those in the IT space, to really try and solve this problem. You have a education platform that you put together, but you also are former president of the South African Health Informatics Association. And I think it's associations like that are a key driver in improving awareness, raising up professionals who can actually assist in this transformation, and getting us to a place where we can go from theoretical to actual practical. Yeah. Maybe just talk to me a little bit about what you are hoping that organizations like Sahia can achieve in impacting healthcare informatics in South Africa, and really getting us to that place of achieving the interoperability that we know will be critical to South African healthcare success.
Yeah. So I think organizations like Sahia, they fit into quite a unique space, and that space comes out from that. I always say that in healthcare, in the digital healthcare, you have two different or multiple different groups of people. But you can categorize them into two main categories. You can categorize them into the clinician or the clinical side, which are people dealing in the clinical, the users, the nurses. And then, because it's digital, we have to classify the IT side, the technology, the infrastructure. Now, I always say it's quite interesting because in my training academy, I sort of looked at this and said, there needs to be a bridge between these two. For a health informatics professional needs to understand the clinical space a little bit. I don't need to know all the terms.
The intricacies,
that's why I didn't go into medicine, because I can't understand the doctor's terminology. So I went on the IT, the technical side.
Yes.
But on the technical side, I needed to understand that what you're looking at is a medical image. Let's say it's an X-ray. What are you actually looking at? Because you're dealing with clinical people.
Yes.
So this bridge between clinical and IT, and I actually call it health IT. And it's quite difficult to get that together. And Sahia, as an organization, creates an environment to cater for both of those groups. So it would have clinical-based content, but then let's talk. I want to talk security now. Security is IT. All right, but security in healthcare, is it different to security elsewhere?
Yes.
Not necessarily, but in healthcare, we're wanting to share more information because we want to share information for the patient. So you have to think of it from the environment, the clinical environment that you're in.
100%.
So I always talk about this, I term the frame clinical IT.
IT, yeah.
And all I'm saying is that clinical IT comes with some other criteria which are maybe different to a financial IT.
Yes.
Biggest one is if a patient's on the table and you need to save his life and you've got technology, I can't say, oh no, we'll shut it down, we'll come tomorrow and have a look.
Yeah.
It's now. It's 24 hours, it's immediate.
Yeah.
And so those things. So Sahia, as an organization, has the ability to provide the platforms and bring collaboration of people together to achieve certain goals, and interoperability would be one of those key points.
I want to ask you a question that could land you in a bit of hot water. So you're free not to answer it, but I'd love to hear your opinion. Medical schemes, healthcare funders are sitting on a large pool of data. They've got claims data, they've got clinical data, they've got demographic, psychographic, any number of data. And a couple of them have gone into alternative services like banking, insurance, outside of healthcare. And that data has served them well in making those business models viable. Do you feel like they're doing enough in terms of creating systems that share that data and information for the good of South African healthcare or African healthcare in general?
So yeah, maybe it is a question that might put me a little bit in hot water, but I'd like to answer it by saying that the funders and the hospital groups within the private sector had an initiative. I'm not going to mention the name. The people that are watching this most probably know what I'm talking about, which was really around about interoperability and sharing of information.
Yes.
And with all of that, all that's happening in space, that didn't necessarily work. And that's disappointing.
Yeah.
So are they doing enough? Well, I think I would have liked them to have done a bit more to make it work. I don't know all the reasons, and I'm not in a space to be onto that. But just as a patient or as a medical aid user, and I would like my information to be more available.
Yes.
I really do have a challenge these days when I go to the doctor.
Having to fill out your form 17 times.
17 times, exactly. Go to this one and I fill it. This information is sitting in a big data center.
Yes.
Technology's there.
Yeah.
Why can't I just give the doctor my ID number and say, here I am, and he pulls up the information and says, is this you? Is this correct? I say, yes. I have consent to share this information with appropriate? Yes.
Yeah.
And also then why don't you give me as the patient the ability to decide? And so a lot of this is like, yes, you need consent, give consent.
Yeah.
How do I control consent? I've forgotten how many doctors I've given consent
10
to.
Yeah.
You know, it's that type of that thing. So I would like them to do more in that space. Just make it simpler, make it easy. And I was hoping that would emerge from this project that had started, but it seemed, in fact, it actually was moving towards going with government, and it just, I don't know if it died.
Yeah.
Marta has no, maybe it's not died. But to answer the question, have they done enough? They should have done more.
Yeah, 100%. And I would agree with that. In that, I think that possibly the world is there to do more. Whether they've done enough for us to look back and say that we've moved the goalpost, that's up for debate, I suppose. But I think that at least I would like to hope that if you are serving patients in healthcare in any capacity, whether it be through a funder or whether you are a clinician, you want to do what's best for the patients. So let's hope that this galvanizes them to do a little bit more. Yeah. We've heard the term universal health ID. And from my understanding of a universal health ID, it is essentially something that's accessible by me as a patient, and I can see all my health data on there through all my visits, all of my bills, all of my interventions, everything that's happened, and it's available to me. Is that the end goal of something like interoperability, where me as a patient, I'm the custodian of that information and I can share it? And if it is, I've heard many infrastructure proposals, from blockchain being the answer to maybe something like this being the answer, FHIR being the answer, for example. Is that the ultimate end goal of interoperability, and what structure would we use to make that possible, in your opinion?
So I think at the end of the day, that would be one of the goals of interoperability. I mean, you could look at it and say there's many goals of interoperability, but yes, allowing patient information to be available to the patient in a centralized manner could be achieved through interoperability. Let's say that. I mean, if we look at the United States, what they essentially did is, they had this meaningful use model for funding, essentially. So it didn't become about a service fee that you paid for the service. You actually had to show outcomes to get paid.
Yes.
And one of the key drivers for that was they mandated, using interoperability, that you had to be able to give the patient the information digitally. Now, what did that do? It drove digital healthcare, the deployment of digital healthcare in the United States. It drove it significantly because it was a mandated thing, and it impacted the money that you're going to get or get paid, or how you're going to get paid. So the end goal of having a patient having all access to all the information, in the South African context, I think it's quite difficult to vision that because we got separated, we got very diverse groups of people, and when we talk about connectivity, not everybody's connected at the same level. Yeah. And we still deal with a lot of, people, cell phones are great, but they're actually on SMS type thing. They don't necessarily have WhatsApp or data. Data's expensive.
Yes.
So that type of vision, interoperability could achieve it, yes. I think the first thing is creating a foundation. Go back to my mandate identification. Have a single identifier, so that if I do go between systems, if I do go to this doctor, I use that identifier and I have access to the data into that space, or that doctor can access that. And then it can grow. It can grow into having all this data. Just remember that a single patient with all their data over a lifetime is an incredibly large amount of data,
100%.
essentially. So at the end of that has to be paid for. And
hosted somewhere.
Hosted and paid for. And it is expensive. It's not
nothing. Yeah.
So who's going to pay for that? Well, is the state going to pay for it, or is the patient's going to pay? At the end of the day, I don't think that's really been worked out.
Yes.
And that's where sometimes the stumbling blocks do come in to deploying the digital. But that does not allow, I don't believe it, allows people to say, well, we shouldn't then do it.
Yeah.
We can start off with small steps. They can make a significant difference. For me, I said ID is important because if I move my ID between systems, then I can collate data.
Yes.
At the moment, what I do is I can get data from 5 different systems. And is it the same patient? Basil, I want to tell you a story about data and data and clean. So when I started off doing the work and working in that digital department way, I won't give away my age, you're right, but way back. And one of the things we were doing was we were collecting data, and I was looking at this data, and somebody said to me, how do we identify a patient? And I said, well, use an identifier. We use the first name, the surname, date of birth.
Yes.
Do you know how many Hendrik van der Merwes are born on the same day in South Africa? Or take any other name. It's common.
John Lewis. Yeah.
How many are born on the same day? Oh, that doesn't work. I can't use that. I need to have a unique identifier to identify the patient. So that is a key step for me. Start that, because that drives everything else going forward.
Yeah.
Then you build up on use cases, what you need to achieve. There's specific stuff for radiology. There would be specific stuff for this area, and build. And slowly you'll get to a point of getting to that goal of at least being able to collate data together. And then hopefully you can collate the data from different systems and put it into a system. If I can just lead quickly on the subject of, you talk about fire.
Yeah.
So where fire is different and where fire makes sense is look at it from a perspective of, I call it the push-pull paradigm.
Yes.
Okay. So when we're talking about I want to share data from one system to another, I can push the data. I can say, here, this is what I've got, I'm going to push it to you. But if I've got to push that data to multiple systems, I've got to push it multiple times.
Yes.
So I've got to say, here's the data, I'm pushing it. Then I've actually segregated that data into multiple systems. What Fire does is it looks at the pool concept.
Yes.
So it says, I don't want to store all the data in my own system. I'll pool the data from whichever system has it when I need it. So a good example of this is a hotel. You go on the web today and you go to a hotel to book a hotel.
Through a booking platform.
Yeah. Well, you just go to the website of the hotel.
Oh, yeah.
You look at it, you look around, you found the great one. Yeah, like the one and only in Cape Town. Good example. Okay. When you want to find out where it is, do you go to the hotel's website, their own directional tool?
No, go to Google Maps.
Oh, Google Maps. Where's the data sitting? It's sitting in another system. How do you do it? I pull the data.
Yes.
And I display it. I want to get my TripAdvisor.
Yes.
Reviews. Do I look at the hotel's reviews? No. And then we know that's a bit expensive.
Yeah.
Go to the TripAdvisor.
Yes.
I'm going out to a data system. So translate that into healthcare. I'm a patient sitting at a platform in front of my computer. I log onto my profile and I say I want my health records. Okay. I use Fire to pull the data from the NHS, National Health Laboratory.
Yes.
Or from X Lab. That's my lab results.
And I would enter a healthcare identifier to give me access to that data.
Yes, and some sort of authentication. We use web authentication for it. We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Same thing happens. I want my radiology reports. I went to 5 radiologists.
Yeah.
I query all of them on my identifier. That's my identifier's key. Pull the reports. I'm allowed it Yes, there's technology that we need to, in terms of the consent and all that we see, but that's essentially what FHIR does.
Wow.
It allows web technology, uses the web technology basis to essentially pull data into a central place, display it, and the moment I'm finished with it, I close down the thing and it's off. I haven't lost data.
Yes.
So I get single points of correct data. I'm not having to have them all over the place.
And that's remarkably more efficient, because I can then build my own profile if I want to, and I can store it on my own systems, and then there's no question about, where does this data need to be hosted. If I want to build a robust profile for myself, I can do so, and I've got the infrastructure that allows me to extract that data to build my own healthcare profile.
But now what you're doing is you're pulling it from central repositories.
Yeah, that's fun.
And where do those central repositories sit? They might sit with a medical funder, they might sit in a hospital, they might sit in government.
Yeah.
So the technology is not an issue. The connectivity to some people will be an issue, but let's say is connectivity and it's developing and it will continue to improve.
Yeah.
So that's not our challenge. Our challenge is getting the people to actually say, this is what we want to achieve. And you need to break it down into small chunks, because to try and do everything in one go will just be too...
This is the problem here now, is that the problem is people.
It is.
So the robots are going to come for us. Eh?
And I'm gonna, now you see, now you're going to put me on the hot spot.
Yeah. We better get our act together, because once AI gets into robots, we're in trouble. You are clearly very passionate about this. You've dedicated the majority of your life to trying to see this goal through. What keeps you going? What do you want to see? What do you hope will happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I hope that my knees don't give in.
Fair.
I would like to see more collaboration.
Yeah.
More universal collaboration. I mean, I think there's an interesting thing. People often ask me, are we behind?
Yeah.
South Africa is not behind. But we need to be thinking forward. We need to be thinking our situation and how we do it. We need to write our own book.
Yes.
And we have the ability, we have the expertise, we have the people. We just need to get us together and do it in small chunks. Start with something small. Sorry, let me go back to your question. What do I like to see?
Yeah.
I would really like to see collaborative, more, I want to say testing. So my big challenge with a lot of sort of conferences, a lot of talk. We all talk, but I want to see doing.
Yes.
I want to see projects that are known about. We see the result and they're publicized.
Yeah.
Listen, this is what's happened now. Come test, maybe even a couple of hackathons where we get students involved, teach people. We need to educate on standards.
Yes.
We need to use standards. But just have a couple of key points. Focus on them, get them done, and then we can move to the next level. I think people often look too hard, too quick in the space. Let's build from foundation and just keep adding on. And I would really like one day to be able to go into a doctor and say, I'm Clive. Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Great.
I see that you, can I share your information? Yeah, whatever. Or here's all your information. Is it correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Good.
And off I go.
And then at the bottom there, the little button, can I get a discount?
Well, I think that's a different department. But
let's not go down that rabbit hole.
But I mean, that level of efficiency, I mean, can you think about just the amount of burden that will be lifted off the state system?
Yeah.
And if we do eventually find ourselves in a national health insurance, scenario, I think that makes that process even more efficient.
Yeah.
Clive, is there anybody's work that you're looking at the moment who you really admire, and whose vital insight do you think we should get next?
Oh, sure. Now you're going to put me on the spot. Listen, I think the Private Healthcare Information Standards Committee, FISC, they do a lot of great work. We talk about data and the meaningful usefulness of data. The government mandated, and I'll talk about this mandated thing because mandate is important. I think we need some mandates around from government to drive things.
To drive this,
but they mandated ICD-10 diagnostic coding to be used in South Africa.
Yes.
They didn't do so well at implementing it in the state, but the private sector took it through the help of FISC and implemented it. That information is vital to the funders to be able to manage the risk around disease, around that. I mean, there's so much information that's valuable. So that they do a lot of good information, good work in in the coding space at the moment.
Yes.
When I'm not talking about computer coding, I'm talking about diagnostic coding or procedure coding. And they also do they're doing quite a bit of projects in the healthcare sector around interoperability.
Yeah.
So they're actually looking at converting the claim methodology and use of claims into using FHIR. So that's one of their projects, and they have multiple projects. So I would maybe think of
getting a roundtable,
bringing them, get a roundtable, get some discussions. A couple of people in there that I could suggest joining the discussion.
Yeah.
And then I would really like to get to know what's happening on the government side in terms of the CSIR and health, the HPRS system and where that is going. So if you could get somebody to talk on your show from there, I would definitely be the first to listen in.
Well, maybe you can even be involved in that discussion, I think. We'll certainly definitely do our best to try and get that going. And if they're listening today, they have an open invitation. We'll leave the email address in the show notes at the bottom, and they can reach out, and we can hopefully get that going. Yeah. But I want to thank you so much for everything you're doing to make the lives of everyday South Africans a little bit better by trying to get the chaos that is healthcare systems and informatics and into a place where we can move away from the siloed dispensation we find ourselves in and move to a place where we're a little bit more connected to be able to help the clinicians make better decisions, help the funders allocate capital a bit more efficiently, and ultimately help the patients get the best possible outcomes. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure.
Is there any way that we can get a hold of you if we're trying to get a hold of you?
So the easiest is just to go to, at the moment, the website. Is www.interbacksacademy.co.za.
Great.
That's one place where you can get my number.
Yeah.
Or I can give you the number and you can just put it down, and people are most welcome to email me and just phone if they have any discussions. I'm always open to discussions.
You're on LinkedIn as well?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn.
Great stuff. We'll leave your LinkedIn in the show notes as well. Yeah. Thanks so much for your time, man.
Pleasure.
And thank you for spending this time with us as well. A very heady conversation, something that is not easily digested by someone who's coming to this subject matter for the first time, but I think something that's very, very pertinent in 2026 South Africa and where we're heading with healthcare, especially if we're finding ways now, or having discussions rather, around how we're going to be merging private sector and public sector. The technology and the systems need to be able to talk to each other in a way that makes sense, in a way that helps the patients, helps clinicians make better decisions, and ultimately in a cost-constrained, in a financially constrained economy that we find ourselves in South Africa, we definitely need to find ways that we can make healthcare cheaper as well. I think interoperability is a key discussion we need to be having in order to ensure that those goals are achieved. So if you have any suggestions on where we should go with the show next, any guests you think we should have on the show, any conversations you would like for us to have, please do leave us any suggestions in the comments down below, and share this with your colleagues. Somebody you think might enjoy this discussion, please do share it with them. Our podcast grows by you sharing it with people that are like-minded, that people who might find these types of discussions interesting. My name is Basil Adriaanse, and I look forward to chatting to you again on the Vital Insight podcast.